Thank you very much, Robin, and it is a great honour to be here in England at the SPUT conference, which I attended here, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and never in my wildest dreams did I envisage that so many years later I would be up as one of the speakers. Two things to say before we start. First of all, Rebecca, could you leave that dentist's number? We'll see how good he is with Scottish inquiries. And the other one is that your ears must be well adjusted now, because I was quite concerned. Being from Glasgow, you're always told you're very hard to understand. Well, you know, we've come south of the border and you've already had a Welsh speaker, a Romanian speaker, posh London speakers all over the place, and now an American speaker. So I just hope you're able to adjust now to a Glasgow accent. We've got a few other Glaswegians there that could translate. Anyway, as many of you already know, and I am so grateful to this organisation in particular that I've been associated with for a good many years in a voluntary capacity, because as a midwife you would think it would be instinctive to want to care for babies and their mothers, which I have always wanted and tried to do, but until a number of years ago that seems to be a shifting sand on how people approach that. But anyway, I got involved with pro-life many years ago, and very specifically in the area of post-abortion syndrome, because of the harm and the damage that I saw occurred to women following this. But anyway, that's the reason I got involved with the SPUC and came to conferences in the past and did voluntary work with the organisation that's now known as ARCH, but was known as British Victims of Abortion. It was an invaluable experience, especially in light of the legal struggle that Connie Wood and myself entered into from 2008 and sadly lost through the courts eventually. But SPUC have been absolutely wonderful, and I'm so grateful for the help and support you all gave us and throughout the country, because we genuinely felt the support. It wasn't just material and physical and emotional, it was spiritual as well. And to be honest with you, quite a few speakers have spoken today. Now, I know that probably not all of you, maybe there are some who don't believe in God at all, who come to pro-life meetings, and we know there are atheists who are pro-life, but probably the majority of you are believers, and I am, and it's certainly what drives me and what has sustained me over the years. But to try and abbreviate what happened is in 2007, I was in dialogue with one of my managers at work, where I worked in Glasgow in the maternity unit. There were some terminations carried out in the labour ward where I worked, and these babies would be the hard cases, the babies that have got some type of abnormality, not always life-threatening, but certainly something was picked up. And because the medical approach is to treat people who have these babies differently from those who choose abortion as a social right, they've differentiated how they should be treated. So they want these women to come to the labour ward, where they're going to get a much more intensive application of midwifery care. Other women who choose social terminations would be taken care of in a gynaecology ward, where there may be 2 or 3 nurses on a good many patients, and they won't get a direct one-to-one attention that the labour ward provides. So around about 2007, there was a new doctor that came to work in our hospital, and she was in favour of bringing more of these cases to the labour suite. So we know that they're picked up around about 3 months in pregnancy, could be a wee bit earlier than that, but we certainly didn't have women coming to the labour ward who were less than 18 weeks gestation. In fact, when I first started there in 1988, the cut-off for labour ward, between labour ward and gynaecology, was 20 weeks. But again, because staff don't like to be dealing with babies, especially when they're killing them, more formed babies, so they wanted them to go to the labour suite. So there was always this tension that existed between ourselves and the gynaecology ward. But gradually the doctors were bringing it down to 18 weeks, 17 weeks, 16 weeks, but that certainly was the cut-off for a good long time. And it should be mentioned that the hospital that I worked in, which was called the Southern General Hospital, it had a Catholic background because the west of Scotland had a bit of the leftover, if you like, of the problems of Northern Ireland. So in Glasgow, it was difficult in the 40s and 50s for Catholics to get promoted posts in hospitals. So there were a couple of hospitals that had the reputation of being good places to work if you were a Catholic. One was the Southern General, because it had the history of being a poorhouse before the establishment of the NHS. So that didn't give it a lot of credibility as an establishment. So there were quite a number of senior managers who were of the Catholic persuasion. And although they didn't, some abortions were carried out by the other doctors, there was not the same strong culture that existed in, let's say, the Glasgow Royal Maternity Hospital and then later the Queen Mother Hospital, which originally, by the way, the Queen Mother's is where Professor Donald used to practice. He was the one who invented the ultrasound, and he was very pro-life, but over a period of time the doctors who went to work there were, what I would probably say ultimately became a eugenics mentality amongst them. So they had this reputation of doing a lot more of the terminations. So at the Southern we had senior managers who were Catholic and pro-life. Now, it might seem a contradiction to say, but as we all know, there are many Catholics and other Christians who are not strong about that. In fact, they very much go against accepted doctrine and are very pro-choice. But we had some senior staff and they were with us. So when I went to work there, I didn't really think too much about this. Although it was always difficult, I should say that, because people think it's now just going to become difficult. But it was always difficult because since the 1967 Abortion Act has been passed, I came into nursing in 1975, and even then it was hard to sort of assert yourself. But the thing I did when I first started was I read up the Catholic bioethics information on this whole area to equip myself as best I could to understand what it was I could not participate in and why. And so I was well equipped, but I didn't think I was exceptional, but it turns out I probably was exceptional because I've never come across anyone else, anyway, midwives that have done that, maybe one or two doctors, but so I was quite well equipped to know, and I knew from the word go that I would not be involved with abortion. And I knew from the word go, you have to assert yourself and say this. And maybe I'm jumping ahead here just now, but one of the things I would say is we are working, generally speaking, we are working on the defensive when I think we should be on the offensive. I mean, I know there are some girls, there's somebody here that's maybe nurses or midwives, and I keep hearing this, it's very hard, it's very difficult, because we're defending our position. We need to end that and go on the offensive and bring in the dialogue that just demonstrates clearly that what was being proposed is so harmful, not just to the baby, but to the mothers and the fathers and everyone else, and to the professionals, the doctors and the midwives and the nurses who carry it out. So throughout my whole career, once I got more confident about it, in dialogue with colleagues and friends, I would make it quite clear that I was pro-life, but I made it quite clear that I was pro-life for everyone, not just the baby, but for the mother and the father and the rest of the people who are involved in it. And I can't even think of a time when I had opposition to that thought process, because really deep down, nobody can argue with that. So instead of defending our position, we should be taking it to people. And how I did that at work was on a one-to-one basis. I made a point of trying to find out how the young medical staff approach their work. And as a professional, I had knowledge that women who have undergone abortion, because of the work I'd done with SPUC, the harm that was there, and the size of it, I would bring this to young doctors who came to the labour suite. We would be talking about different women who were in, and there would be this mark on the board, like if a woman was coming in to have her second child or third child, let's say it would be a 2 plus something. It could be 2 plus 0, 2 plus 1, 2 plus 2. The 2 represented 2 children she's already had, 2 viable children. The plus represented any pregnancy loss under originally 28 weeks, but more latterly 24 weeks. But it didn't say if it was abortion spontaneously or abortion by design. So I would always say to the young doctors, if that woman's had a termination and abortion, then if that's part of her history and you're going to work in GP practice, I used to say you can anticipate to see her quite frequently with all sorts of problems, because that is what happens. That was the education I managed to get with the work I've been doing, and with Professor Philip Ney, who's a very famous psychiatrist who works in this field. So I would take it to them to bring this into the sort of public square, but never in my wildest dreams, as I say, did I ever think there was going to be a big legal case about our rights to participate in abortion, until 2007, when it was 2005, we got a new doctor. She was bringing more of the early cases. The incidence was starting to rise. They were not employing the same number of managers. I was a manager of the labour ward, so it was my responsibility to send in the staff to look after the individual women. So I would look at the board to see who was in. This is the same with Connie as well. We sent the staff in to care for these women. And I always had the ability to say, this I don't deal with. And what I meant and what I would say is, I take no responsibility. I'm not delegating any staff. And the staff who knew us, they would self-delegate, because the senior girls knew who would do this kind of work. So that became more difficult with the increased number of terminations that were coming to the labour suite. And staff were actually saying, other staff midwives were saying, look, I've come into midwifery to deliver life into the world, not to kill it. And if they did one termination maybe a year, and in their instance it meant looking after women in labour throughout a termination, that was enough for them. But then they were getting asked to do it maybe once a month, and then became even more frequent. So it was starting to cause problems, and I was taking it to my managers, who didn't want to deal with it at all. They just leave you, but they didn't want to deal with it. But I kept insisting, and that started up a dialogue. But one of the managers threw a power struggle, because the other hospital that did many more terminations was in the process of closing. They were going to come to our place, and we were going to change from having approximately 10 abortions a year to between 2 and 3 a day. So that was what was on the cards, and I was horrified when I realised that, because avoiding 10 a year, and it wouldn't be 10 a year because I wouldn't be always on duty when those cases were in, but this was going to be an awful lot more difficult to do with so many a day. So I wanted, if you like, to cut this off at the pass, so to bring this to the managers. But there was a power struggle, and the manager we had, who said she would do something about it, but knowing her, she wouldn't have. But she lost her job and the new manager came in. I brought it to her attention when I first met her, and she was stunned that there was any resistance to looking after women who'd undergone abortion. Because in fact, in many hospitals, probably what was happening is that the managers were just ignoring the conscience clause, and staff probably didn't have the confidence to say, I don't want to do that. They were getting bullied into looking after cases. So she was stunned. She was younger than me, but she actually came out with the most incredible story, that she herself, she remembered looking after a woman who'd undergone a termination. The baby was born alive, and according to the law of our land, that child is supposed to be treated as a live birth, but that doesn't happen. And she said the baby was born alive and lived for about 3 hours, and she had to keep going backwards and forwards until the baby died, looking to check if it was alive or dead. But the fact was that it triggered something very unpleasant in her, for her to come out. My first meeting with her, and she told me that story, and I was quite amazed. But anyway, I left it with her to deal with. A lot more dialogue, but nothing was getting done. So eventually, on the 27th of November 2008, I brought it to a public meeting in the labour ward. Now, as soon as you bring it into a meeting, it's got to be minuted, and they've got to act on it. Prior to that, it was verbal dialogue, but at that point, they had to act on it. And then they came up with these contrary interpretations of what it meant to have a right of conscience. And I wasn't bothered about it at the time. I thought, they're chancing their arms here. They really are not talking about what the laws permit us to do. They're just making it up as they go along. So I didn't think too much about it until I went home it was during the day, 28th of November, 28th. This was the day after the meeting. I phoned the Royal College, not the Royal College, the Nursing and Midwifery Council in London, just for clarification on the real interpretation of the law. As I said, throughout my whole career, I always made sure I read up the legal cases that have gone to court and everything to do with this issue. But I was stunned by what they told me on the phone. And basically they were taking the manager's position, although they weren't in dialogue at that point. It was just that there are people now in these very professional bodies who've got their own agenda. And I was horrified with what she told me, because I remember hanging the phone up in the labour ward that day and realising I was about to start one almighty battle, because I knew I couldn't let this go. And, you know, I couldn't share that at work, because I know many friends and colleagues, but they don't all feel the same as I do. We're the minority. So I came home from work that day, and we talk about God and how he works, and there's been so many examples here. And I dropped to my knees in front of the image of the Divine Mercy I've got in my sitting room, and I just stunned. You can't formally pray when you're in that kind of state. So I just said, dear God, this is huge. You're going to have to do something about it. At which point I bring forward my Bible. Now I can't quote you verse and chapter. There's a lot of you that probably could do that very nicely, especially the Holy Fathers. But anyway, I let it open, and it opened at Exodus 1, chapter 15 to 22. Now, prior to this, it was speaking about the Hebrews who were in captivity, and Pharaoh was getting very worried because the crowd of men were growing and growing. He wanted to suppress them. The pressure wasn't working. So the point that I just opened and looked at first of all was this verse 15, and it said, he called the Hebrew midwives Shiphrah and Puah, and said, look between the stones. Women gave birth pressing down the stones. If it's a girl, let her live. If it's a boy, kill him. But the midwives were God-fearing, wouldn't do as Pharaoh had told them. And Pharaoh called the midwives back and said, why have you let these boys live? The midwives said, the Hebrew women are very strong and give birth before we get to them. So God blessed the midwives. Pharaoh went on doing what he was doing. He killed the boys. But the point was, midwives was mentioned 7 times. He's my man. You know, he knows I'm a bit slow, but 7 times. And I have to say, in the past number of years, that has been the passage that has sustained me the most, because at that point in time, I had no idea what was ahead of me. I didn't know who was going to be with me or anything. At the end of the day, and after so much trauma of the meetings and everything we had in the hospital, we couldn't get any unions to be with us. Latterly, we know what happened to the Royal College of Midwives. They're totally opposed to what we're about. And their real position has become so much more manifest now in the past 6 months. But we had no other unions prepared to back us, and we were completely isolated on our own. And we couldn't bring any legal people into us, although we were getting the help of Paul, the whole SPUC in the background. We had to fight the battle ourselves at all the stages. And we had all these different meetings, and initially they seemed to back down after about a year and a half of struggle, and I was astonished because they backed down and said we could carry on with what we used to do, how we demonstrated our rights of conscience and not delegating. And I was astonished about this, but then there was a reversal, and on the 10th of March I got 2009, I think it was 2010, I got an email from my managers to say that no, everything was off. If we wanted to carry on with the complaints, carry on, and but they weren't going to change the position. And I hadn't worked since then. That was the last time I worked, because I thought I was on my way out the door to go and work with SPUC or in a different job, and that was my mindset. But then I was learning I was just about to start this whole battle off for real, and it had a huge impact on my health, and we proceeded on anyway, and we got the legal help that SPUC and the supporters financed, and it went through the courts, as you know. It got to the first stage in Edinburgh, and Lady Smith, there was a female judge in every instance that commented on the case. The Lady Smith opposed us, and we knew that in court because she didn't give us any eye contact whatsoever. So we had a feeling about that. We appealed it. It went back to the courts in Edinburgh, And 3 judges in this instance fully supported her position, and they really reasoned it well. However, it was then appealed and went to London, the Supreme Court, where Lady Hale and 4 other justices opposed it, and we lost it entirely. So that was a massive, massive disappointment, not just for Connie and I. And we know that we've had so many of you supporting and writing to us and all the rest of it. And we're just the face of the whole pro-life movement. And it's not just us they've got to, it's everybody who feels they don't want to be involved with abortion and how wrong it is. So it's everybody who's felt the horror of that decision. And it's to try and take some good and something positive out of it. And since then, Connie and I both retired last year, and she's continued to work in natural. Well, it's not really work; it's her interest in natural technology, which is natural procreation, and she loves it. She doesn't like public speaking, but she's certainly been a wonderful companion and support throughout this past number of years. But I feel that if I could do anything to keep going, and I don't despair. The first 3 days that we heard, after we heard the result, I was devastated, and it was like going into, it was just like awful. But after 3 days I thought, no, God is not losing. He doesn't lose this. He's allowed this to happen for a reason. There were people praying up and down the country and abroad. I had communications from South America, from Canada, Australia, of people who were praying for us. And I know there was so much goodwill out there. And I thought, no, God is letting this happen for a reason. And I think it's to waken people up. There is great apathy amongst good people. I mean, I've just come back from the Holy Land. Can you see it? Can you see my circle? No, yesterday morning. But one of the women who was with us, I've known her for a good few years, and she attends to the church that I go to, where the priest who is there, he has been my rock for so many years, Father Towie, and he's mentioned this so many times from the altar. He's organised night vigils and prayer and everything else. And I couldn't believe that this woman said to me out in Israel, she says, Mary, I didn't realise you'd lost. I mean, she's not stupid, but because it was in the media, and then it settled down again, it was in the media again, and the Catholic press was promoting and everything else, but it was publicised. And we did lose, seemingly. But what I do feel strongly about is we should not be on the defensive. We've got the science on our side. It's not the emotions, it's the science. Stories are great and certainly they are important, and I could tell many, many stories about this. But it's the untainted subject that nobody wants to speak about. And somebody said, as midwives or gynecologists, we can get work. Well, I don't know, because in Britain just now there's something like 3,000 midwives short. And we had some discussions about this the past year or so. If hospitals are desperately short of midwives, you can do your training. You can become a midwife and still say, no, I don't take part in abortion. It's the sisters, those who go into management posts, who are being hammered at the moment. But you can't say, I don't. You take it to them and say, I will come as a work as a midwife if you really need. I'd like the job, but I'm telling you now. You're not asking their permission, you're not being aggressive about it, but you make it clear, I don't deal with termination. And I think that you'd probably be surprised how many people on the job would be quite willing to accept staff in those instances. As I say, at the moment, staff midwives can still refuse to participate, and so can staff nurses. But there is such a shortage of staff out there. And we know in obstetrics and gynecology, I think, regrettably, many people who are instinctively pro-life have just avoided the professions. But as someone who believes in the power of evil, Satan doesn't stay still. He doesn't say, okay, I've got obstetrics and gynecology, that I'll leave the rest of you alone. It doesn't work like that. It goes looking to get other doctors involved. I mean, not so long ago they were trying to get GPs to do the abortions, give the medications, and that all be done at home. So you're not safe wherever you are. But we should come together. We should be in touch with one another and take heart and take confidence that we have science on our side. And I'm a great believer in the rebelliousness of youth, which we all are, a youthful generation. But to swim against the tide, it's only dead fish that go downstream. And to encourage young people, as John was given as a talk, John Doogan, my fellow Scot, very good. He was giving a talk at lunchtime. He was talking about, coming together. hopefully soon, this PC world, which is really full of people who are ideologically driven, hopefully soon you will get the rebels amongst the young people who will say, no, wait a minute, this is not right, and start challenging, and there'll be a backlash. And that's what we want, because there is so much good out there. I think if human beings are left to their own devices, you spoke earlier on, Rebecca, I think, said about America wouldn't have actually brought abortion in if it was left to the people. It came through almost default. Was that right? Did you say that?
It was the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so it wasn't voted in by the people. I think similarly here in the UK, ordinary people would not have done that. And we've got to get them on our side and keep pushing. And not be afraid, not to be defensive about it. I'm a great follower of King David. I think it's wonderful, the story. I'm sure he was Glaswegian. Because when he was sent from Bethlehem by his parents to go and feed his brothers on the line when they were fighting the Philistines, this is the way we talk theology in Scotland, by the way. What he was astonished about was the aggression and the provocation that was coming from... what's the guy's name? Goliath, that fella. Yeah. So he was quite astonished, the aggression, and he said to King Saul, "Why don't you do something about this guy?" And nobody would do that. Nobody would take him on. And the fact that King David says, "I'll take him on," and Saul put his own armour onto King David. But it was too heavy. He couldn't work with it. That's why I'm sure he's a Glaswegian. Right? So he throws that off. And the best thing about this story is not... The 5 stones are pretty good, and the sling's pretty good, and knocking Goliath out is really good. But for me, the key to the whole story is not that he defeated Goliath. Yes, ultimately. But he went on the offensive. He didn't wait for Goliath to hit him. He went on the offensive and took the battle. And that's great. When Dr. Chernia... Glaswegian, I'm not good with it. The doctor that spoke earlier on, I mean, all this knowledge about what's really going on in the world, that could crucify us and really, really depress you to the point of you not doing anything. But God is creative, and throughout Scripture, He does use the weakest. If He used myself and Connie, for sure He uses the weakest. So we should not be... We shouldn't despair about that. It's awful, the picture, when you think about it, the effects of communism and everything else. But look at the story about Gideon. He was told to bring an army forward, and when he did, it was sort of 46,000 or something, he immediately got together. But God cut the numbers down to 300. 300. And the reason for that was to demonstrate it was God's victory, not a human victory. So we should not be on the defensive. We should get our facts right, we should learn about it, and as I say, once you get the science of it, the harm that it does to babies and mothers. By the way, I will tell you, Rebecca, I have always spoken about the hard cases first. When I speak in dialogue with my colleagues and friends, I would say I'm 100% pro-life for everybody, including the baby that's been conceived and raped, and these children, the babies that are probably going to die, the anencephalic babies and all the rest of it. Because and I think a lot of people think this, if you abort a woman who's been raped, you're going to unrape her. Well, that doesn't happen. You're just going to make worse one situation with another. So I take this to them rather than wait for them to say, but what about, right? The second one about the babies that will probably die, though Turner syndrome at 22 is a long time, many of those children will die, but there is a huge difference between a baby dying naturally, through natural causes, than when a mother picks the time and day of ending her baby's life. It's phenomenal, the difference that's there. But there's also got a huge impact on the staff, and I want to ask you to be gentle about them as well, because they are mostly good people. I've not really met, I can't think of anybody that I know who is willfully bad. They do it for what they think are the best of reasons. I honestly believe that many of them, and if this goes out on YouTube, I'll probably be hunted, but I think many of them are emotionally harmed long before they take up obstetrics. There's something deficient, because nowadays in this country, because it's different from America, you train in the National Health Service, and it's in the National Health Service the majority of abortions are carried out. So anybody who chooses obstetrics and gynecology, most of them will do it knowing that they're going to kill other human beings. But so to choose that profession in most instances takes a special kind of person. So, but they aren't all bad people, as I say. I think they're very harmed, and I think what they're doing, they don't like it at all. They've got their parameters. Some of them will go to 12 weeks or 14 weeks, but a lot of them won't go beyond that. So please pray for them as well, and do what you can. Now, I was told to stop at 4 o'clock, but it's 5 to 4, just to prove to John I won't ramble on for too much longer. Anyway, I thank you once again for all the help you've given us, and just encourage you, don't be afraid of keep pushing, and try and reclaim the land. It's God that will do it, not you and I. Okay.